Hi, Morgan here for Onefinity, and today we're going to be making the super simple shop stool on the CNC. Buckle up. It's just 3 interlocking parts cut with just 1 bit, and it goes together with no tools, no hardware, or no glue. It's pretty neat. It's nothing fancy, but because we're dealing with machine cut joinery, there's a few things you need to pay attention to. So let's take a look at how I designed it, and more importantly, why I designed it that way. When designing for the CNC, you have to design your parts with the capabilities and limitations of your machine in mind. For example, I plan to cut these parts out using only 1 bit, a 1/4 inch diameter spiral end mill. I need to be mindful of how the bit cuts and be mindful of that in my design. On inside corners, a 1/4 inch end mill is always going to leave an 1/8 inch radius. So anywhere there's joinery, I'll need to create clearance so that I don't have to go back in with a chisel or anything like that. The legs are in 2 parts and they fit together with a half lap. Because this joint requires 2 parts that fit inside of one another, it's super important that we know the exact thickness of the material. See, this plywood is actually 0.72 inches thick, not 3/4. If I designed and toolpath these parts as though the material was 3/4 of an inch thick, all my joints would be sloppy. And when you have a machine this precise, there's no excuse for sloppy joints. And even though we call this a half lap, it can't actually be half. Remember, the 1/4 inch bit we're using is going to leave an 1/8 inch radius on the inside corners where the 2 parts meet. So we'll need to cut these shoulders an 1/8 inch deeper to create clearance for the material that the bit left in those corners. The third part is the seat, which stabilizes the tops of the legs and mortises and holds the whole thing together. You'll notice the legs come up at an angle. Well, the machine can't cut angled mortises, so I had to straighten up the ends so they'd properly fit into the mortises on the underside of the seat. The tendons are going to have square edges, but remember the bit's going to leave a radius in the corner of the mortises, so we just need to create an extra 1/8 inch of clearance to accommodate that. I designed the parts on my iPad using an app called Shaper 3D. We'll put a link in the description for you. Once I was happy with the 3D models, I projected the face of those models onto a 2D plane, which turns them into sketches which can be exported as a DXF or an SVG and imported into your toolpathing software of choice. I set up the job as 48 inches wide by 24 inches high and 0.72 inches thick. I just went to the old big box store and picked up a 2 foot by 4 foot sheet of 3/4 inch maple plywood. And I had the XY datum set to the center of the material because I'm cutting the parts out of the middle of this big sheet of plywood. And if I'm a little bit out of square or not quite on the center, it's not a huge deal because I've got some buffer in there. As long as I'm reasonably square and not too far off center, everything should turn out just fine. Again, I'm using a 1/4 inch diameter downcut spiral bit. That just gives me a cleaner cut as opposed to an upcut spiral bit. You're going to install your bit, then you're going to jog the X and Y axes to position the center of your bit directly over the center of your material. Once you're centered, zero out your X and Y axes on the controller, and then probe for Z. If you don't have a touch probe, you should get one, but you can also lower your bit very, very slowly down until it just barely touches the top of the material, and then zero out your Z axis that way. Load the G code, open the program, then run that bad boy. After the cutting operation is done, separate the parts from the larger sheet of plywood. To remove the tabs, you can use a flush trim bit, but because I already planned to round over the edges, I just went ahead and went straight to the round over bit. My tabs are an 1/8 inch thick, so a 1/4 inch round over bit will remove the tabs and round over the edges in one shot. It just saves me a step. Once the 3 parts are cleaned up, just put that dang thing together. If you want it permanently assembled, feel free to use wood glue, but it's not necessary. The stool is going to be good and strong with friction alone. And if I ever want to break it down and pack it up to go camping or something, this is a great little piece to keep on hand. Free cut files for Vcarve 11 with pre-programmed toolpaths for both Woodworker and the Journeyman will all be available for download on the Onefinity user forum. We'll put a link in the description for you. Cut it as is, play around with the design, or use it as a guide for something you design. Whatever. Have fun with it. Alright, that's all I have for you today. And on a side note, I know that it's been a few weeks since we put out one of these videos. We were at the Vectric user group meeting in California for a few days, then I got smacked with a hurricane when I got home. But barring any natural disasters, we should be back on track and getting these videos out to you more regularly. So thanks for your patience. Okay, that's it. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you get a heads up next time we post a new video. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful and I hope to see you on the next one. Y'all be good.